let's let's continue with the muscular system. We have only the 11th chapter and the 12th chapter left. So we have skeletal muscle for biology, I meant. We have skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, the skeletal system, the sarcomeres, and contraction and relaxation of muscles. So, what do we know already about skeletal muscle? It's that it's voluntary and it's under voluntary somatic control, and it is multi-nucleated. The the other two, smooth muscle and cardiac muscle, are uninucleated. The skeletal muscle provides supported movements, while we know smooth muscle and cardiac muscle don't do that. With skeletal muscle and we also have blood propulsion, thermoregulation, and we know that it is striated. The red fibers are for slow twitch support. They also are for support, so they should be slow and steady. And dark meat, that's where you have your red fibers. Carry out oxidative phosphorylation. The red is the sign of red blood cells. So they carry out oxidative phosphorylation, and oxidative phosphorylation is for when you have all the electron transfer chain, etc., stuff like that happening, right? And then you have white fibers. They are fast twitch, and they are for active white meat, and they are for anaerobic metabolism. Then we have smooth muscle, where they are in respirators, in our respiratory tracts, our reproductive organs, the cardiovascular and digestive. Also, when you're urinating, the that's part of the reproductive. So kind of in the renal system too. Then it's involuntary under involuntary autonomic control. It's uninucleated. So striated and multinucleated is for skeletal muscle. Why is it like that? The origination, I think, is the cause of that, but we'll. So, smooth muscle can display myogenic activity without neural input. So, kind of, I think, when you have these twitches, that's when you have myogenic activity, but you're not having any neural input. That's interesting. It reminds me kind of like, I don't know, octopuses, like, or other animals. Some of them have this. Maybe sea sea animals, right? Cardiac muscle. They are contractile tissue of the heart. They are under involuntary control, autonomic control, and uninucleated, sometimes binucleated. They can display myogenic activity, and the cells connected with intercalated discs that contain gap junctions. So gap junctions are a thing for cardiac muscles. And these cells, the cardiac muscle cells, are connected with intercalated discs, right? The skeletal system is derived from mesoderm and also the muscular system. So the musculoskeletal system is derived from mesoderm. And then we have axial skeleton, which is the skull, vertebral column, rib cage, and hyoid bone. And appendicular skeleton, which is the bones of limbs, pectoral girdle, and pelvis. Then we have compact bones, which are provide strength and density. We have spongy bone that are lattice-like. It's a cancellous bone, spongy bone, lattice-like structure of bony spicules, known as trabeculae. Cavities filled with bone marrow. We have also bone marrow, which is red and yellow. The red is filled with hematopoietic stem cells, and the yellow is fat. We have long bones, spicules. So, what are the examples of axial skeletal bones? It's like skull, vertebral column, rib cage, hyoid bone, appendicular, limbs. They are perpendicular, right, to the ground. Pectoral girdle, pelvis. Then we have periosteum, which is connective tissue that surrounds bone. We also have long bone, so spongy bone, compact bone. The bone marrow is probably inside. Yeah, spongy bone. Cavities filled with bone marrow inside the spongy bone. And the long bones, they are shafts called diaphysis that flare to form. Flare, does that mean fire? A sudden brief burst of bright flame or light. The flare to form metaphysis. Burn with sudden intensity. Become wider at one end. Gradually become wider at one end. The dress flared out into a huge train. His head lifted, his nostrils flaring. That flare, so it's interesting. Flare also means widening, gradually widening out on one end. So these shafts called diaphysis, they flare to form metaphysis, and that terminate in epiphysis. Epiphyses contain epiphyseal growth plate. We need to just go and look at the bone formation mechanisms for this. Then we have periosteum, which is a connective tissue that surrounds bone. So periosteum around the bone. So it's a connective tissue and it surrounds the bone. Ligaments attach bones to bones. Tendons attach bones to muscles. Bone matrix osteons are the chief structural unit of compact bone, consisting of concentric bone layers called lamellae, which surround a long hollow passageway, the eversion canal. So we have the eversion canals as long, hollow passageway, and around it is lamellae. And osteons are the chief structural unit of compact bone. So compact bone, again, it provides strength and density, and they consist, so the bone matrix consists of concentric bone layers. So these bone layers are the lamellae, layers of bone, and they surround a long hollow passageway, which is the eversion canal. Between rings are lacunae. Between what rings are we talking about? I think we're talking about the lamellae, right? Lacunae, where osteocytes reside, which are connected with canaliculi. Sounds like an Italian dessert. But osteocytes reside in the lacunae, and they are connected with canaliculi. Then we have bone remodeling, which is osteoblasts building bone, and osteoclasts resorbing bone. So B builds bone and C crushes bone, right? Then we have, these are for bone remodeling. Then we have parathyroid hormone, PTH. So we know calcitonin drops the calcium levels in the blood to make bone, and PTH is the opposite. So PTH breaks down bone and increases the calcium levels inside our blood. So bone resorption. Osteoclasts are in action for PTH, and this increases blood Ca2+. Vitamin D is also like that. It reabsorbs bone, so it kind of empties the bone. And history, stop the alarm. So what happens here is the blood Ca2+ increasing, and calcitonin does the opposite. So it forms a bone, and there is less calcium in the blood. Now, people who are taking vitamin D too much, this will result in their bone breaking down to bring Ca2+ into the blood. Therefore, we need more calcium in our system, like calcium citrate, stuff like that, right? I work in an endocrinology clinic, which is exactly about that, and we need to be able to measure these vitamins, hormones, and make sure that everything is balanced. Now we have cartilage, which is firm and elastic. Matrix is chondrin, secreted by chondrocytes, avascular, and is not innervated. So we have cartilage, joints, and fetus, which is the baby, right? So cartilages are firm and elastic, and joints are movable, and you have synovial fluid. So cartilages that are firm and elastic, matrix is chondrin. Their matrix is chondrin instead of osteons, right? And it's secreted by chondrocytes, not osteocytes, right? And they are avascular. There's no capillary beds or vasculation inside them, and they're not innervated. So there is no neurons going to cartilages. Then we have joints that are immovable. They are fused together to form sutures. We have movable joints that are strengthened by ligaments and contain a synovial capsule. And we have synovial fluid, which is secreted by synovium, and it lubricates joints. So synovial fluid is secreted by synovium, and that lubricates our joints. What's the difference between the movable and immovable joints? The movable ones are strengthened by ligaments and contain a synovial capsule, but the immovable ones don't have synovial capsule. They're fused together to form sutures. We have bones that form from cartilage through endochondral ossification. Skull bones form directly from mesenchyme and intramembranous ossification. So our skulls are built directly from mesenchyme and intramembranous ossification. Then we have sarcomeres. Now we go into muscles. They are the basic contractile unit of striated muscle. And when we're talking about striated, we're talking about skeletal muscle, not smooth muscle or cardiac muscle. We have thick myosin and thin actin filaments, and troponin and tropomyosin that are found in the thin filaments and regulate actin myosin interactions. We have Z lines, M lines, I band and A band, and H zone. These 5 things we want to know about. Z discs are also another name for Z lines. Now, Z lines define the boundary of each sarcomere. So we have these, so we need to be able to draw this. This looks like the thick filament, myosin, and these look like the thin filament, actins. Then we have the M line, which is the middle of sarcomere. Then we have the I band and A band. So A band consists of both actin and myosin, but I bands consist of thin filaments only, actins. And H zone is only myosin filaments. So I only actin, actin I, H myosin, middle myosin H, and A band contains both actin and myosin. A band and, right? A band, A and is both of them. Only part that maintains a constant size during contraction. So the only part that maintains a constant size during contraction is A band. The other parts, they change their size during contraction. How does it make sense? Let's say we are flexing our muscles, we are contracting this. So the I band is bigger beforehand, now it's smaller. The H zone is also bigger, the myosin part, and then it contracts, so it's less. And we had I, H, A is the only one that stays the same, and the M line is in the middle, Z line is on the side. Simple as that, nothing complicated. Then we have sarcomeres that attach end to end to become myofibrils. So when these sarcomeres attach end to end, they form myofibrils. Each myocyte contains many myofibrils. So the smallest unit is sarcomere, the basic contractile unit of muscle, striated muscle. Then after sarcomere we have myofibrils, then you attach them together, and many myofibrils together form myocytes, right? Then we have sarcoplasmic reticulum. Is this similar to endoplasmic reticulum? I hope so. I think so. So Ca2 plus field modified endoplasmic reticulum. So the difference between sarcoplasmic reticulum and endoplasmic reticulum is that Ca2 plus calcium is filled inside sarcoplasmic reticulum. And sarcolemma is the cell membrane of a myocyte. Again, myocytes are all these myofibrils attached, many of these myofibrils attached together, while each myofibril consists of sarcomeres attached end to end. And sarcolemma is the cell membrane of the myocyte, the biggest one, right? And T tubules are connected to sarcolemma. So these T tubules connect to the cell membranes of myocytes, and they carry signals. Great. By signals, we are probably bringing Ca2 plus. So let's look at the contraction relaxation. Begins at neuromuscular junction, where the efferent neuron releases acetylcholine that binds to receptors on the sarcolemma. So we have the neuromuscular junction. Is this gap junction? We don't know. We'll see. The acetylcholine binds to the receptors on sarcolemma, causing depolarization. Hey Siri, stop the alarm. The depolarization spreads down sarcolemma to T tubules. So the depolarization goes down T tubules, triggering the release of calcium. The calcium binds to troponin, causing a shift in tropomyosin and exposure of the myosin binding sites on the actin filaments. Did we have troponin and tropomyosin found on thin filaments and regulate actin-myosin interactions? So the Ca2 plus that goes down T tubules binds to troponin, which is on the thin filament, right? It shifts. It causes a shift in the change of structure in tropomyosin in exposure of the myosin binding sites on the actin filament. So the myosin binding sites are on the actin filaments for sure, because that's where the myosin, the thick filament, has to attach on the actin, and it exposes them, right? The shortening of the sarcomere occurs as myosin heads bind to exposed sites on actin. So yes, we expect the myosin has to bind the actin, myosin binding actin sites, myosin binding sites, forming cross bridges. So we form cross bridges and pull the actin filament along the thick filament. So this cross bridge causes the movement of actin along the thick filament. sliding filament model, right? And then we have the muscles relaxing when acetylcholine is degraded by acetylcholinesterase. So what takes away the acetylcholine is acetylcholinesterase, and it esterifies acetylcholine as we expect, I think. So that's for muscle relaxation, and you terminate the signal in allowing Ca2 plus to return to sarcoplasmic reticulum. And what was sarcoplasmic reticulum again? It was the endoplasmic reticulum of the muscle. So you allow Ca2 plus to go. Where was Ca2 plus? It was attached to troponin. It was bounded to troponin, right? ATP binds to myosin head, so and allows it to release from actin. So we use ATP to relax the muscle. Now, when you have cadavers, when you go to cadaver lab, you will see that all these muscles are stiff, and that is because ATP is no longer available in our body when we are dead. Therefore, the muscles remain stiff and they do not relax anymore because you have no more ATP. You have no more energy in the body and no more metabolism, basically. So we have simple twitch, which is a single muscle fiber responding to a brief stimulus. We have frequency summation. We had summation in about in the nervous system, remember? So we have frequency summation. This summation is also true, I think we have it in psychology, in the perception probably section. So the frequency summation is the addition of multiple simple twitches before the muscle has a chance to fully relax. So we want the muscles to fully relax, right? And before that, we have addition of multiple simple twitches, and that's frequency summation. The oxygen debt, it is the difference between oxygen needed and oxygen present. So this is a term that I might have not stumbled upon yet. So you have an oxygen debt. It's the difference between the oxygen that you need and the oxygen that you have present in your body. And when we have creatine phosphate, which adds a phosphate group to ADP, forming ATP. This is important, actually. This is an important is this an enzyme? Should be like a creatine phosphatase, something like that, like kinase. I think we have creatine kinase. So yeah, that's what creatine kinase does, right? Adding phosphate to ADP to form ATP, and via myoglobin, we know it's like it's not sigmoidal, it's a hyperbolic, and it has only one subunit, which does not have the positive affinity to hemoglobin. Heme containing protein that is a muscular oxygen reserve. So it reserves oxygen for our muscles. And it has heme, but it has only one subunit, right? So it does not show the positive affinity, positive binding characteristic. Okay, now let's go to our flashcards. So let's go here. Let's go here. Let's unlock these 140 cards. So we go here, make a custom study session. So we go here, we put 141 new cards. We want the chapter 11, and we want to also rename it to B11 skeletal musculoskeletal system. Is this how you write it? I'm pretty sure that's not how you write it. But anyway, what type muscle provides support and is involved with movement, blood propulsion, and thermoregulation? Honestly, movement is skeletal muscle. Blood propulsion should be smooth muscle. And thermoregulation, still smooth muscle. I think smooth muscle. Well, produce movement, yes. Maintain posture, yes. Stabilize joints, yes. Generate heat, sure. And propel blood. How does it propel blood? Because it's voluntary, it's not involuntary.
Let's talk about muscles, and I've drawn the human body on the right, kind of a figure of it, and I want to talk about the three major types of muscles. And I thought it'd be helpful to have a picture because then we can actually draw on there and show where the different types of muscles might be. So when I mention muscles, the word I want you to start thinking about in your head is movement. So think about all the different types of movements that might happen in your body. Just be really creative and start thinking of all the different movements. You might have, for example, a really easy one would be maybe, let's say your leg is moving. I'm going to just draw on a picture as we talk. But let's say your leg is moving because you're playing soccer. And so you've got this giant muscle in here, and this muscle is attached to a bone, right? There's a little bone here. I guess not so little, right? This is the largest bone in the body. It's called the femur. And so this muscle is attached to the femur, and this muscle is going to be attached by way of tendon. It's going to have tendons on both sides. And so this tendon is attaching it to the bone and allowing it to act on the bone. So this is an example of skeletal muscle, right? So this skeletal muscle is going to be attached to a tendon and bone. Now, that brings up the question, does every skeletal muscle have to be attached to a tendon and bone? Well, the answer is no, actually. There's some muscles that really aren't attached to tendons at all. In fact, right above the muscle we just drew is a muscle called the external oblique muscle. And don't worry so much about the names, but the idea here is that this muscle is actually not attached to a tendon. Well, in a sense, I guess you could think of it as a tendon, but it's like a flat tendon, basically a giant kind of sheet of fibrous tissue. And this fibrous tissue, is it kind of floating in midair? No, it's going to be connected to fibrous tissue on the other side because, of course, your body is symmetric. And so you've got fibrous tissue on the other side, and you guessed it, on the other side of that, you've got another external oblique. So you've got these muscles that are kind of coming into not really a tendon, but really a flat tendon, or something that looks like a flat tendon, and we call that an aponeurosis. So you might hear these words. I just want you to kind of be familiar with them. And now if someone asks you, is every muscle in the body attached to a tendon? You can say no. Some are attached to a flat tendon called an aponeurosis. So the idea here is that you can kind of start identifying skeletal muscles, right? They're usually the muscles that you can see on your body, right? Actually, I don't even need to put quotes. That's the actual name for it, so no need for quotes there. So you can identify skeletal muscles pretty easily. But what about the other two? I mean, what about the cardiac and smooth muscle? I mean, you might wonder, is cardiac, does that mean heart? And is that the only type of cardiac muscle out there? And the answer is yes. This is your heart muscle right here. And the only type of cardiac muscle that we have in our body would be related to the heart. So in the heart, you can find specialized cells that were so interesting and different from skeletal and smooth muscles, they got their own name and category. So these are the cardiac cells, and you can only find them in the heart. So actually, I guess we're making a column of where you can find these cells. So what about smooth muscle? Where can you find smooth muscle? Well, for smooth muscle, think about any hollow organ that's got space on the inside, and blood vessels. Those are the two kind of major categories. Those aren't the only ones, but those are the major ones. That'll get you about 95% of the way there. So blood vessels and hollow organs are what you should think about. And hollow organs could be anything from, let's say, your stomach would be a hollow organ, or let me just put these examples here, or your bowels would be a hollow organ, anything like that. So I'm just going to write stomach here just to kind of jog your memory, where there's basically some empty cavity on the inside, right? And then as for blood vessels, just remember, one of the largest blood vessels, for example, is the aorta, and the aorta kind of comes up and over like that. And it's kind of like a hollow organ as well, right? There's a space on the inside of that blood vessel, and blood is usually flowing through that space, but at least it's hollow, so it's really not that different conceptually from the hollow organ. And just like in the hollow organ, the smooth muscle is in the walls of these things. So think about where the smooth muscle would be. It would be in the walls of the hollow organ or in the walls of the blood vessel. So that tells you where to find these different muscle types, right? And thinking about movement, smooth muscle can help the stomach, for example, move food forward. Cardiac muscle is going to help your heart beat. That's a pretty important movement. And skeletal muscle, we use that every single day. Every time you give your friend a high five or give your mom a hug, those are skeletal muscles that are helping your body move around, right? So let's move on. Let's think about some other differences between these categories. Let's talk about now the movement control. So who controls the movement, right? Do you control it, or is it automatically done? So smooth muscle is what I would consider automatic, or I'm going to call involuntary, because you'll probably see that word more often.
Yeah, we did study these. Let me just move forward and just have Chat GPT here. let's add a new one. How can skeletal muscle aid in blood propulsion? Okay. Wait a second, I'll have to refresh everything and I'll be right back.